Thank you, Brother Ed, for the signs of the times, and I'm sure we could spend the rest of the hour and probably the rest of the day talking about what's going on and how it applies to prophecy and how we should be thinking and acting and reacting or understanding. And I think that's one thing that talked last week a little bit. How does this apply to our Daniel study? And I think we can see it just throughout this whole chapter of chapter 10. It talks about, it comes in at near the end of Daniel's life, after Babylon had been overtaken, uh, and then we're into the third year of Cyrus, the king of Persia here, and so he's seen all these things and all the prophecy, and he's perplexed and warning and thinking about all this stuff, and it's bothering him. And but he keeps his faith, he keeps his conviction and his strength, and he's shown here what will happen at the end with the multitudinous Christ, this certain man, and it carries on. That's in verses 4 to 6. And it carries on down near the end of the chapter. I just got to find it again. He talks. He's told to remain strong and be strong and keep up his faith. And that's, I think, a lesson for us as well, is to, we see all this stuff happening, and it's very concerning and troublesome, and 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 can get us worried. But we need to be strong in our knowledge and our faith and understanding that God is in control of everything, and that it will work out, even though there's going to be a lot of bad things that are going to happen, and we may see it, and don't give up. So, anyways, last week we got to just about the end of verse 6 in our study. We are So verse 6 reads, his body also was like the beryl, and his face as the appearance of lightning, and his eyes as lamps of fire, and his arms and his feet in color to polished brass, and the voice of his words like the voice of a multitude. And so, according to my notes, we got down to his arms and his feet like in color to polished brass. So we're in the expositor here, and I'll just read that portion. It says, arms and feet are the active members of the body, used for working and walking, here outstretched in energetic and furious operation. The arms portray the multitudinous Christ in acts of mercy and judgment. And I think it'd be good to go through some of these verses here that he's referencing. It just helps add to the discussion, or add to our acknowledgement. So, acts of mercy and judgment, Deuteronomy 33, verse 27, it says, the eternal God is thy refuge, and underneath are the everlasting arms, and he shall thrust out the enemy from before thee, and shall say, destroy them. And Jeremiah 25, verse 31, a noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for the Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked to the sword, saith the Lord. And Joel chapter 3, verse 11 to 13, assemble yourselves and come, all you heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. Let the heathen be wakened and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put you in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come, get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for the wickedness is great. So that's talking about the acts of mercy and judgment of the arms, whilst the feet depict the movement of the saints marching forth to subdue the oppressors. So Psalm 72, verse 4, he shall judge the poor of the people, he shall save the children of the needy, and shall break in pieces the oppressor. And to discipline the rebellious, Zechariah 14 and 4, And his feet shall stand in that day on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west. And there shall be a very great valley, and half the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. And the feet also to bring good tidings of the gospel of the new age. So we read Isaiah 53:1, who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? Isaiah 52:7, how beautiful upon the mountains are the feet of him that bringeth good tidings, that publisheth peace, that bringeth good tidings of good, that publisheth salvation, that saith unto Zion, thy God reigneth. And compare that to Romans 10:15, and how shall they preach except they be sent? As is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. So the color or the appearance of the arms and legs is that of polished brass. The metal is first purified by fire and smoothed by friction so as to reveal the beauty of brass. And we can read Numbers 31:22 and 23. Only the gold and the silver, the brass, the iron, the tin, and the lead. Everything that may abide the fire, you shall make it go through the fire, and it shall be clean. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with the water of separation. And all that abideth not the fire, you shall make go through the water. So the polished brass is subjected to stress, agitation, and refining in order to produce the finish of polished brass. Since brass symbolizes flesh, polished brass speaks of flesh after the trial and affliction of the divine treatment. Goliath, man of flesh, clothed his mind in a helmet of brass in 1 Samuel 17. If we read those verses, it's actually 4-7. There went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. And he had an helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. And he had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. And Rehoboam replaced his father's shields of gold, or gold is faith, with replicas of brass or flesh. In 1 Kings 14, it says, and he took away the treasures of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. He even took away all, and he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. And King Rehoboam made in their stead brazen shields, and committed them unto the hands of the chief of the guard, which kept the door of the king's house. Though the man of the one was associated with flesh nature, as was Christ, Hebrews 2:14, for as much then as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is the devil. So though the man of one was associated with flesh nature as Christ, yet they have all been purified by the fire of trial and the polishing of Yahweh's word. Hebrews 5:8-9. It says, though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. And now, envisioned before Daniel, stands resplendent. The flesh, which formerly housed the emotions of sin, has now been clothed upon with immortality, and stands glorious in spirit nature. And there's a bunch of verses there. If we look at Luke 24, it says, behold my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. This is Jesus speaking. Handle me and see, for a spirit hath not flesh and bones, as you see me have. And 1 Corinthians 3, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire, and the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. If any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. And if any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. And then 1 Peter 1. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, which according to his abundant mercy hath begotten us again unto a lively hope by the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead, to an inheritance incorruptible and undefiled, that fadeth not away, reserved in heaven for you, who are kept by the power of God through faith unto salvation, ready to be revealed in the last time, wherein you greatly rejoice, though now for a season, if need be. You are in heaviness through manifold temptations, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than of gold that perisheth, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and glory at the appearing of Jesus Christ, whom having not seen you love, and whom though now you see him not, yet believing you rejoice with joy unspeakable and full of glory, receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls. And then in chapter 4, beloved, think it not strange concerning the fiery trial which is to try you, as though some strange thing happened unto you. But rejoice inasmuch as you are partakers of Christ's sufferings, that when his glory shall be revealed, you may be glad also with exceeding joy. If you be reproached for the name of Christ, happy are ye, for the Spirit of glory and of God resteth upon you. On their part he is evil spoken of, but on your part he is glorified. But let none of you suffer as a murderer, or as a thief, or as an evildoer, or as a busybody in other men's matters. Yet if any man suffer as a Christian, let him not be ashamed, but let him glorify God on this behalf. So that's kind of the end of that little portion on the arms and feet as colored to polished brass. I guess we can look at there's a lot in there again. One thing I took out, or one comment, polished brass is flesh that has been purified by the trials and divine treatment. Everything comes from God, including our trials. And as we deal with our trials, are we serving God and realizing the trials are meant to develop our character to be in line with Christ's and God's character? And I think that the Hebrews chapter 5 quote there best summarizes that with Christ. Though he were a son, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him. But with that, I'll just open it up here for questions or comments on the eyes and the feet, or anything else that we've talked about. A comment from the Richard Hall.
Yeah, Brother Sid here. I was kind of struck by the contrast between the description that we read of Goliath's armor and all of the things that we could see about it, and the description of this certain man in Daniel chapter 10. The get up that Goliath had on was all about the might and the fierceness and the strength of man, and incidentally was brought down by a small stone as the image of the vision of Nebuchadnezzar has the image being brought down by a small stone, and this description in Daniel 10, we see the description of a spiritual man, his body in fine linen, and his loins girded with gold of Uphaz. We know what those things represent, and they do not represent the might of man. And then the mind goes to what we were talking about in the Signs of the Times part of our class, and thinking about Israel wanting to reestablish their military might, and no thought about establishing themselves with God. They make the assumption that they are under the guardianship of God, and that is, because of their goodness in God's sight, that they are going to be protected by Him. But we know from prophecy that they have yet to be brought to realize that they are not as close to God as they thought they were. They still have never recognized His Son. So there's quite a contrast here between the garb of the multitudinous Christ and the garb of mankind as displayed by Goliath's armor.
Brother Gordon, did you have a comment? No?
No? Okay. Brother Ed?
Yeah, Brother Darren has a comment here.
Brother Darren, go ahead.
Well, my comment was actually quite similar to what Brother Sid was just talking about. It's the reason why this kind of study is so important for us. I've heard so many interpretations of this prophecy or that prophecy, and just this week alone, just on different podcasts and everything else, people are struggling to understand. And what we find is that a lot of people, they take the event and try to find a prophecy and make it fit, kind of thing. And it creates a lot of uncertainty and not a ton of understanding. But what it does do is creates a lot of panic within people. And it's so important for us to understand. I don't understand a lot of prophecy. I understand little bits and everything myself, but it's part of what gives us our comfort in the truth, and our understanding that, and really arming ourselves with tried faith, the gold, is understanding this stuff. It gives us comfort instead of fear. It gives us something that we look forward to, the coming of Christ, instead of dreading sudden destruction. The strength of David was, he refused the armor that Saul had given him to go and face a guy that was carrying literally tons of armor on him. Like Goliath was a strong guy. That stuff would have been really heavy. It would have been very foreboding, and he could wield it. He was their mighty man of valor, and his spear alone, what did it say? It weighed 600 shekels of brass, which it would have been devastating to get hit by that thing. And David wore nothing, but he was armed with his faith in the promises. There was no way that this Goliath was going to ever defeat or God's promises. And that's what it was down to. It wasn't the army. It was never about the army. It was always about God made a covenant. And there's no way that God was going to let any sizable force defeat those promises. And David was armed with that faith. And that is what we're armed with. And that's why it is very important for our young people and people like me that don't understand a ton about prophecy and everything to delve into this stuff and learn it. It arms you with that faith that there's no way the whole world could be against Israel and against against us or against God. You see it in the universities, you see it all over the place. These people aren't just protesting for Palestine, they're protesting for Hamas in some cases. And this anti-Semitism and everything is just going to increase. And it is very important for us to arm ourselves with that faith that there is no way that God is ever going to let man come in between his promise that he made and his plan. And that gives us strength that no shield or any tank or armor can ever provide.
And I might just add too that the reason for that is what makes the difference, you know, that we have being able to maintain a straight course, a true north guidance system that we understand these things. And, you know, we understand that Israel is there as the apple of God's eye. He that touches you touches the apple of my eye, God said. And it makes a difference between maintaining a straight, true north course and ricocheting from crisis to crisis.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Darren and Brother Ed. From the Richard Hall.
Yeah, Brother Gordon here, just, point out that, you know, Daniel, saw these things, he saw the great, disappointment, because of the length of time that he was given to understand that these things would not happen right away. And, you know, in our first part of our class, we're dealing with signs of the times, and sometimes it's just temptation. Just wish Christ would come and straighten it out right now. But this builds faith when we see these things slowly working around, and even setbacks, or what appears to be setbacks. But remember that Daniel was so overwhelmed by this vision that he kind of went through like an act of dying almost, which we'll get into. And but he could see he was given this vision, so he could see the power and the strength of God's arm, which the Goliath class rely on brute force. That's the only thing they believe in. And that's the world today. They believe in military might. They don't see this vision of the man of one, which we see, which changes our perspective hugely. And we just have to wait with patience for that, for God to reveal himself in this way.
Brother Sid has a comment here too.
Yeah, we'll take Brother Sid's comment.
Yeah, we're just, just looking at verse 5 there, the fine gold of Uphaz. And we've already had a description of the process of developing polished brass. And we also know that gold is a Bible symbol of tried faith. And it can only be fine gold if it is such that will withstand the refiner's fire. And it kind of connects up with Brother Gordon's thoughts, you know, that we wish that Christ would come and get this all over with. But we don't know to what extent time will try our faith. And therefore it is important for each and every one of us to, in the words of Scripture, seek the Lord our God, to build a faith that cannot be broken down by the process of refiner's fire. And we know that our faith will likely be tried. We don't know how much it will be tried, but we know how valuable a strong faith will be in the face of any amount of trial. So it's sort of a thing like Brother Ed brought up in the Signs of the Times part of the class about us not becoming complacent to the information that we have available to us to be prepared. And I think it's an important exercise for us to work on building on that faith and drawing near to God with our hearts, and not just going through the motions of being good Christians or good Christadelphians who have the proper doctrines to satisfy the statement of faith and so on and so forth, we need to build a fine gold type of faith that is ready for whatever it is that we will need to go through before the time of peace and safety comes at the return of Christ.
Thank you, Brother Sid. We've come to the end of our time for our class today. So I'd like to thank everybody for being here today. It's nice to hear voices and see people online, and there's so much more that we could comment on, just the little bit that we read, but we'll leave that for another day. And maybe to close our class here this morning, brother Sid, would you be able to offer a word of prayer for us?